quick video on who we are as a brand, what makes us a little bit different, and why you might, I suppose, lean into or take on board some of the advice in today's session. Obviously, it's a very confusing landscape at the moment out there with all of the different rebates that are available. So without further ado, I will hand over to just a very quick video.
The power of Mother Nature is abundant. It's all around us. Our mission at 1K5 is to harness this and revolutionise the energy market in Australia. We want you to live on the power of sunlight and wind forever, for free. That's why we've developed New Energy. New Energy will provide the cleanest, cheapest electricity for you, thanks to the intelligence of Heartbeat AI. It observes the live energy market and optimises your solar, battery and key appliances electricity usage. Your New Energy experience is powered by local teams of experts who leverage the global strength of 1K5. 7 countries, 2,200 team members, over 300,000 installations. $14 million tonnes of CO2 saved. So take control and leave old energy behind with 1K5, the heartbeat of new energy.
Excellent. So that's it's a little bit about who we are as a business. I'm sure on today's call there'll be a whole mix of people between people that have already been through the process, spoken to some of our specialists, or maybe even just had a quick look through the website. And there may also be a whole host of people that have never been introduced to us as a business, myself or anything that we do. So hopefully throughout today's presentation, it can be as informative as possible. You get as much information out of the session as possible, but also you learn a little bit more about who we are should you decide to move forward with solar and batteries at any point in the future. So what can you expect today? Well, we've got, I would say, 5 parts to today's session. We are going to try and be as detailed as possible on what we believe are the most important topics, but you will see there at the end of today's session in the live Q&A, you have the ability to actually ask questions. It might be regarding the rebates, it could be regarding any of the information that we've discussed, or it could be about solar and batteries. Anything to do with any of the topics can be discussed. Feel free to ask away. You can do that via a live chat function. So to give you a little bit of an update on that, down the bottom right hand side of your screen you should see 9 dots. You'll then see Q&A. If you click on Q&A, you can click on that, and then you have the ability to ask a question, and that will then pop up just like this. And that the marketing team for us will pull them out and pop them in a nice list for me to answer, and then hopefully we can answer those questions and get as much out of today's session as possible. But starting at the beginning, the first part will be why solar and batteries are even incentivized. So there's a lot of rebates at the moment. There's a lot of questions regarding that. And there are a lot of answers, hopefully. So we'll tick off why the government's paying you and not fixing the grid, how solar and batteries stabilize the grid, and why that means feed-in tariffs are falling. We'll then move into what rebates and incentives are available, and what you can claim currently, including federal and state-based, and a little piece on businesses. Part 3 will be affordability and finance. Once the government have chipped in, how do you pay for the rest of it? We'll cover off solar financing, loans versus energy bills, why many households actually end up cash flow positive, and what fast and flexible providers we recommend. And then finally, getting the system the right size. So the rebates are attached to the size of the system that you install. And we are seeing a lot out there in market right now of people going with the biggest possible system that they can. And does that make sense? What are the things you need to look out for, and what are the impacts of charging and your daily performance? So the webinar will go for around 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how many questions we have. The recording will be sent to everybody that registered to this. So I would urge you to stay online in real time because it gives you the opportunity to ask questions. But if you do have to duck off at any point, the recording will be sent out to you guys to watch in your own time. Although do bear in mind that the exclusive webinar offers that we do have available are only valid for a certain amount of time. So don't procrastinate on this. Don't think you'll do it over Christmas and then never get around to it. There's never really been a better time. Moving on to who I am. My name's Grant Ackroyd. I'm the Sales and Installations Director for 1,5 Australia. I've helped the team to over 225,000 solar and battery installations nationwide. And I'm told I have a deep understanding and a good knowledge of products, wholesale energy market, return on investment strategies, and also the last point, this session, rebates and finance solutions. How we can help as many people access the cheapest and cleanest electricity at any given time and do it smartly. So hopefully I'll be a valuable host for you today. And if not, please do feel free to provide feedback. See if I can get out of the next one and see if I can get somebody else to do it. Or maybe you'll be stuck with me next time. But we'll jump straight into the session. Part 1, why are solar and batteries incentivized in 2025? It's important to understand with any good story what the whole point of this is. Why are we doing this? Why are the rebates? Why is there so much buzz around this at the moment? And you do that by starting with the doom and gloom. So there's a lot of different reasons why the renewable energy boom is happening. Obviously, we have the environmental benefits, we have carbon offset, we have the Paris Climate Agreement, and the goals of the state-based, federal and global governments to achieve net zero. What all that does, though, in terms of tangible impacts to everyday Australians, is it puts a lot of pressure on the grid, and those pressures are not slowing down. So as we start to take big powered coal-fired power stations and gas-fired power stations offline and replace them with more and more renewables, we have a transition period that increases instability and means that we have positions where we have blackouts and brownouts and lots of scary news articles that are thrown at us every single day saying the grid's under pressure and it's not going to cope. So what does that do? What does that actually mean, and why is it a problem? Well, we have a wholesale energy market in Australia. We don't just have a standard, here's your electricity, you pay a flat price for it, and everybody's happy. We actually have a very complex supply and demand situation happening in the background before the energy gets to your place. And the reason why we wanted to highlight this is you may have heard terminology or terms such as I would say the solar duck or the energy duck or the demand duck. But essentially we have seen over the last 5 or 10 years, as more and more solar systems have come online, that this demand is really changing. So previously you would find demand would be relatively flat. But as more and more solar systems, particularly at the home level or behind the meter, are coming online, we're finding more and more people are buying less and less electricity through the middle of the day, which is a sign that solar's been having a significant impact on how people are using energy. We have the biggest uptake of solar anywhere in the world in Australia, and that's thanks to, in part, the generous subsidies that have been in place. But what that does mean is that we're really seeing a shift in how energy is being used, consumed, produced, and needed. And in the past, we would have coal-fired power stations, gas-fired power stations that would be built with the intention of matching the demand. So power would be available when demand is there. Now, because we have the generation only available at certain times of the day when the sun's shining, so in the middle of the day when everybody's getting that free and cheap electricity, what we have to start doing now is shifting the usage to when the generation's available. So changing that demand period and hopefully stabilizing the grid and creating a flat demand again. So on the left, you'll see the electricity market, how the electricity curves through the middle of the day. That's when power's almost free on the wholesale market. And that then transfers across onto the right-hand side where we have increased pricing volatility. You may or may not have seen on the news recently that come July next year, power companies are going to be required to offer 3 hours of free power through the middle of the day, which is fantastic for people that don't have solar, that have large loads like EVs to charge in the middle of the day. But what it does mean is that power companies aren't going to be making the same amount of profit. So there's a very good chance that these peak periods when people are at home using energy are going to be seeing increases in power prices as well. So what it means from a power perspective, though, is when that middle of the day curve happens and the price of power drops, that's when historically solar customers have been feeding their energy back to the grid. They've been receiving a feed-in tariff, which is one of the incentives that have been available for solar systems over the last sort of 10 plus years. But we're actually seeing that with the increase in solar adoption, that supply and demand imbalance is really widening. And the graph on the right hand side of the screen is, you'll see that the feed-in tariffs are steadily dropping over the years to where we are today. And that little orange dot down there is poor old Victoria, that's seen pretty much a 0 cents feed-in tariff. So right at the very start, we had the 60 cents a kilowatt hour for export. And in today's market, we're seeing feed-in tariffs at 1, 2, 3, and 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And that's because daytime power is significantly cheaper and in some cases free or negative, and power companies are having to either pay to take that energy off you and then pay to put it back to the market, or they're actually being charged for doing so. So feed-in tariffs on solar, the traditional feed-in tariff model, how do I make money from solar, has disappeared, and we're now starting to see plans like wholesale energy plans that incentivize customers to discharge energy back to the grid in peak times out of the battery and get paid to do so. And that's having a profound impact on the battery uptake. It's one of the reasons why we have the Cheap Home Batteries program, is to try and match the demand that's available in electricity from those peak periods and try and shift some of that to the daytime generation. So what's the impact that we've had from this declining solar feed-in tariffs? Well, over the last few years, we've seen longer payback periods. The government rebates that are available, and we'll touch on those in a moment, they are dropping every year. So every year that you don't do this, the rebate that is available to you is becoming less and less generous. That means that your cost or your out-of-pocket price will increase. At the same time, we're seeing feed-in tariffs reducing, as we saw on the previous slide, which means not only is the upfront benefit from rebates declining, should I say, but the day-to-day real-time feed-in tariff income that you can see has also been dropping. That's leading to more self-use. So we are finally starting to see a shift in how people talk about solar. For a few years there, people were saying it's not worth it because I'm not going to make money anymore. It's 100% true in part. You won't make money from solar, but you will save money. And a dollar not spent is a dollar saved, or a dollar made, if you like. So we're seeing more self-use. And then finally, we are seeing an explosion in batteries, again, because of the rebates that have been put in play. And for those of you that can see on the right-hand side of the screen, this is the last sort of 5 years of battery adoption. And you'll see very, very low numbers. But the last 2 quarters, since we've had the Cheap Home Batteries program really come into play on the last quarter, is it's a significant explosion of batteries in the market. And that means that there's starting to see big changes in wholesale power prices, the dynamics really shifting, and more people are accessing cheaper and cleaner electricity. So the question is, why are the government incentivizing you to do it and not just fixing the problem themselves? Why not put large batteries in and large solar systems and just provide energy a different way? Instead of providing it via coal and gas, why not just change how things are generated, improve the transmission lines, and then provide power as normal? Well, upgrading the national energy grid is going to cost billions and billions of dollars. It's also going to take decades to do. So it needs to happen. It will happen over time. But actually doing it quickly and within the time frame that's needed to meet the targets that have been put in place from renewables perspective, but also to provide that stability to the grid, are almost impossible. Whereas solar and batteries let Aussies generate and store electricity locally at the house, same as solar, but it's done in real time. So the progress that's been made since the start of July, when the Cheap Home Batteries program was announced, has been profound. It's been significantly quicker to do than it would have been to even agree on the name for a government policy to get a grid scale battery and improve the transmission lines. And that's why programs like the STCs, which we'll talk about in a moment, which is essentially the battery and solar rebate, that's where they exist. So if you're looking for 2 options, there's a centralized generation piece, which is increasing generation. You then have to overhaul the transmission to then get it to the power, which is very slow and very expensive. Or option 2 is incentivize people like you all on the call to adopt rooftop solar and battery systems. It's deployed at the house where the energy is needed, and it's fast, decentralized, and a much more efficient way of doing it. So there's obviously pros and cons of both options, but option 2 is where we are currently, and we're seeing it's a significant increase in the number of batteries added to homes. How does the battery and solar system strengthen the grid? Well, it's always good to talk about electricity and water at the same time. The two obviously mix very well. There's never been a problem doing so, so we'll continue with that trend. Our electricity market has a requirement to stay at a certain demand level. It has to have a certain amount of generation or inputs, and you can see that can be from multiple different avenues. We can have fossil fuels, we can have renewable, we can have hydros. There's multiple different ways of getting that energy in. And then we also have to take a similar amount out, and we have to match the supply and demand. So by adding batteries and adding batteries at scale particularly, what it allows us to do is have large reserves of energy where it's needed, when it's needed, and it can be called upon very, very quickly. So there's no need to then panic and have to turn on gas-fired power stations to ramp up coal generators quickly. We have the energy thanks to battery storage, particularly where we need it, when we need it, and that then has a significant increase in stability in the grid, which also then improves the pricing volatility as well. So the solution in action, as we've said, is to store energy when supply is high and use when demand is high. That'll flatten the peak demand and also reduce stress on the grid. Stress on the grid equals cheaper power, and the cheapest power is also the cleanest power. So we have a better renewable outlook. We meet those net zero targets. And then again, grid instability is a real problem, and having all of that generation storage at the right place, it improves the stability, and it ensures that the energy is available as and when it's needed. So that's why there's rebates in play. That's why the government, whether it be federal or state, are constantly introducing and pushing to market new rebate schemes. Scheme sounds underhand, but it's definitely not. They are intended with good purpose, and for most part administered very well. There's always a couple of grey areas, and there's always areas where people do play in the darkness, unfortunately. So it's really important that you know what you're looking for. But what we wanted to do was to give everybody a bit of a snapshot or of an overview of all of the rebates that are possibly available. And this isn't all of them, this is most of them, to adopt renewable energy, solar batteries, heat pump hot water systems, electric vehicles, sustainable upgrades, energy efficiency. The list goes on. And we won't talk specifically about any of the state-based stuff really, because it is very, very specific. There's a lot of do's and don'ts. There's a lot of things that you have to consider. What is exciting is a lot of the state-based things, particularly like the Solar Homes program and the REP scheme in South Australia, are stackable on top of things like STCs and the Cheap Homes Batteries program. So definitely speak to one of the specialists that operate in the states that you are living in and is relevant to you. And we have consultants up and down the East Coast and in South Australia. We don't currently operate in Northern Territory, Tasmania or WA at the moment. So if you are in one of those states, we wouldn't be able to help you at this stage. But for everything else, East Coast and South Australia, we're good to go, and we have experts on the ground and ready to help. But what we will talk about is the Cheap Home Batteries program and the federal solar rebates, both administered via the STCs. And then we can also talk about access to cheap and clean financing as well, which makes it even more affordable over and above. If we start with the federal rebates for solar and batteries, these incentives are actually run under the federal small scale renewable energy schemes, or SRES for short, because in Australia we really like to shorten pretty much everything. Sticking with that scheme, we have the small scale technology certificates, or the STCs, and that's what the rebate scheme is. So the rebate that you receive on your quote for a solar or battery system is it's a dollar amount calculated by the number of STCs that you receive, times by the amount that those rebates are worth. The two rebates have been live for very different periods of time. So the solar STC rebate in one way, shape or another has been live since around 2011. There's no cap on that from a funding perspective. It's actually funded via energy companies or large contributors of carbon purchasing the certificates that are generated, which creates a pool of money to then use for rebates. It is locked in until 2030. It's legislation until 2030, but the value of that rebate drops every year. So when this started, it was an incredibly lucrative scheme for both the industry and for customers. It made a significant difference to the upfront cost of a solar system. When I joined the business 5 years ago, people were receiving $4,500 to $5,000 upfront discounts through the STC scheme for a 6.6 kilowatt solar system. I think that's dropped down to about $1,600 or something thereabouts, depending on the state you live in now. So it's dropped by a factor of 3 just over the last 5 years, and it will continue declining until 2030. So if you are going to do this, it makes sense to do this as quickly as possible because it's going to be the most value to you. And then in line with the STC program, at the start of this financial year on the 1st of July, the Cheaper Home Batteries program, which is also administered under the same program, but with a slightly different funding route, went live, and that had a $2.3 billion fund allocated to it to help people adopt storage. And that also drops on the 1st of January. This year, it will reduce by around 10% in the overall value. So systems that would apply for that rebate would receive 10% more doing it this year than next year. But again, that is set to decline all the way until 2030. Now, at the bottom of the slide there, you'll see there is a note regarding the end and the future is very uncertain, particularly of the Cheaper Home Batteries program. It has been announced that it will be locked in until 2030. However, there's also a flat $2.3 billion of funding that have been allocated to it. So there's a bit of uncertainty at the moment as to whether that program will continue, how it will continue, and whether funding will come from, whether it will be refunded by the government or whether it will fold into the normal funding process for solar under the solar STCs. So there's still a little bit of uncertainty. What is certain though is it's having a massive impact on the number of people that are firstly going for storage, but also on the size of the storage system that is being added. So that's the federal solar and batteries rebate. That's available for businesses and for residential. A quick tip to the business funding that's available, because we're very focused on residential, but there's a huge piece to be played here, or a huge part to be played by industry and by businesses. As a business, we do operate both residentially and commercial. We're inside the top 10 commercially nationally, so have an expert team ready to help. As a quick snapshot for the businesses though, you can still receive the Cheaper Home Batteries program, providing the battery is within the ranges in the program. We'll touch on that a little later. You can access STCs for under 100 kilowatts of solar and LGCs over and above. You have the ability and tax benefits for depreciation and instant asset write-offs, and then also specific state-based rebates. All businesses are eligible in one way or another, but the difference between being a small to medium or SME and corporate or CNI is quite profound. So do speak to one of the specialists after this to get some specific information. But what's exciting is we do have options to fund, whether it be PPA, where you never actually own the asset, upfront, where you pay a fixed rate, solar leasing, and low interest loans. So there's lots of different ways to get into this commercially, as well as there is residentially. But what is clear for both residential and commercial is there's no better time than the present. So we tend to find that a lot of people, I'll do this down the line, I'll do it in the future, but we wanted to give you a bit of a snapshot of how the rebates will actually change over the next 5 years for, say, a 20 kilowatt hour battery system, to put into perspective the difference in rebates versus doing this now and holding off until maybe the end of the program. So the red line are power bill expenses. we are seeing a steady increase, with some increases of up to 20% over the last few years per annum. It is easing off a little bit, but that could be due to some of the government stimulus on bill reductions and the cost of living payments that have been applied to bills. So the red line shows a $1,800 power bill per annum with a 10% increase. And the blue line shows the rebate that you would receive today, next year, and every year thereafter until 2030. And the difference between doing this now and 2030 is around $3,500 worth of rebates that you wouldn't see, which is upfront money you never have to pay for that asset. And then also $14,000 worth of power bills based on that $1,800 a month, a quarter, and a 10% inflation rate. So you can see there's a million different reasons why you would do this now. Obviously, everybody's financial situation is different, and we will touch on how we can make it more economical and easier to access for customers that don't necessarily have the capital ready to pay up front. But you can see it's a significant difference doing it now versus doing it at any point in the future. And you can see the rate of reduction for those. So how the rebate will change if we talk about batteries in sizes. A kilowatt hour of energy today will receive $372 a kilowatt hour, and in 2030 it would receive $188 a kilowatt hour. So some significant difference in the amount that you'd receive, whilst also paying for power on pretty much every day that you don't have a large solar and battery system installed. If we look at the impact that the battery rebate is having, when the government went to market with this initially, they had some predictions on how it would go. But what we've really seen is that the uptick of batteries, particularly over the last 3 to 5 months, has been significant. So nearly a month ago, we were up over 100,000 batteries installed. I wouldn't even want to hazard a guess at where we're at right now. I haven't seen any recent published data, but I would imagine it's significant. And what that means is every time a battery is installed, a rebate is claimed. The pool, that $2.3 billion, is definitely dropping. We haven't got the details in this, but what we have got in previous presentations that we've done is a rough calculation of how much of that $2.3 billion fund has already been claimed. And we were up to around about $800 million worth of rebates already claimed, meaning whilst it's locked in until 2030, the current round of funding looks like it could be exhausted as early as the end of the financial year. And that's for batteries installed and claimed. Some businesses are claiming a 3 to 6 month lead time on installations, just due to, firstly, stock shortages, but also, more importantly, quality installation shortages. Installers are a hot commodity at the moment in the industry, and we do have a trade or skills shortage. So those time frames are going to blow out. And the reason I'm telling you all this, without coming across as a sleazy sales guy, the sooner you do this, the more likely you are to claim your piece of the pie and be in a better financial position long term because of those rebates. So a quick recap on the Cheaper Home Batteries program itself. Kicked off on the 1st of July. We're now almost 5 months in and almost halfway through that initial $2.3 billion funding pool. It is designed to only cover about 30% of the overall cost of the battery system. We're finding a lot of quotes out there at the moment, which is scarier, significantly higher than that. In some cases, the rebates offsetting 60 or 70% of the customer out-of-pocket cost, which means that something is being missed in the installation or the quality of the product. We're seeing a lot of noise at the moment in the industry regarding certain products that are having some issues. Regarding installation quality is a massive topic at the moment. And generally speaking, if it seems too good to be true, it is. Cheap is not good, and good is not cheap. And whilst the program is called the Cheaper Home Batteries program, it's designed to make good quality systems cheaper and more affordable. It's not designed to make this cheap, because that is a recipe for disaster. So do make sure if you're getting multiple quotes, you're not just looking at the dollar figure, because there are very clear guidelines set out by the government on what they expect this to offset. And if it's not within that parameter, there could be a problem. And then finally, battery sizes. We are expecting the average battery to continue climbing until changes to the program are announced. It was originally expected that battery sizes would be around about 12 kilowatt hours of average size. what we're seeing is that they're closer to 21 or 22 kilowatt hours now, and our average battery size is creeping up to 30 kilowatt hours. So customers are opting to go larger. You can claim the rebate on up to 50 kilowatt hours of this 100 kilowatt hour of storage. The other 50 kilowatt hours, if you went all the way up to the 100 figure, would be paid full price. But I mean, realistically, guys, a 50 kilowatt hour battery is a very, very big battery residentially. It's not the norm, it is the exception, but people are doing it for sure. And what does that mean? When's the best time to buy? Well, it's already here. So rebates reduce every year, as we've discussed, and that value drops on the 1st of January. Santa's already here. I can already hear the sleigh bells. It is very, very close. He's around the corner, which means the 1st of January is also too. You get less back. So the lower the rebate, the higher the overall cost to you. Battery prices aren't falling fast enough to offset it. So the cost that you pay will be more significant if you wait, and every month that you wait is more power that you're paying, and also higher upfront costs. Now, don't just take my word for it. I'm by no way a financial advisor, just an industry veteran, if you'd like, on rebates. But what we do have is Scott Pape, the Barefoot Investor, actually put out to his audience on his own newsletter in 2024 that he sat twiddling his thumbs for years when he could have earned a 30% return on his money. The thought of it almost makes him want to hang his footprints up in shame. And the investment that he was talking about is installing solar panels. Rebates were incredibly lucrative at the start of this. Feed-in tariffs were incredibly lucrative. And it was the early adopters and the people that made the decision at the start of this to dive in head first. They were the ones that got the biggest return. So don't be writing to your audience 5-6 years from now saying you missed out. Be one of the ones that took advantage of this, that got the return, and that made the decision to basically eliminate your grid requirements, because you're going to be the people that get the best out of this. So now we've covered what rebates are available at a state level. At a federal level, there's obviously state level rebates that make it even more attractive for things like adding VPPs and additional low interest loans. We then have to think about how you're actually going to fund the out-of-pocket cost piece. So we really wanted to make this visual and say, well, there's a few different situations. So number one, the old energy bill. That's before solar and battery. That's your house with a full energy bill every quarter. You receive the energy bill, you pay for it, and then 3 months later, or a month later now, you get another one. We get a lot of customers that say they don't want to use things like payment plans or financing because they don't like the thought of having a loan. They like to pay up and square up and they're done. Very few of us buy our houses cash. We leverage a loan because it's important. You could save up for 30 or 40 years and then get a house, or you could use the money that you would have been paying to rent to acquire the house and then pay off the mortgage. Solar and battery systems have a very, very similar outlook. You can continue paying your energy bills, whether you get solar or battery or not. You are going to continue paying that monthly, quarterly, or annual amount for power. Power is very much like a loan. You don't pay for your power up front in a lump sum. You pay for it after you've used it on a regular reoccurring amount. The only difference with a power bill is you have no idea how much the amount's going to be until you actually receive the bill, versus putting a solar and battery system in, accessing the rebates that are available. And the number one goal is to jump all the way over to here and to become completely bill neutral. And all of the money that you've been using then goes into savings. And once you hit the point of a return on investment, which means the money that you have saved by not paying for power exceeds the amount that you paid for the asset, means you are now cash positive, and it's putting money back in your pocket. That's the easiest to do by paying upfront for the system. But over 50% of our customers actually opt for a payment plan or a green energy payment plan. They partner with one of the specialist finance companies to provide the funding for the asset, and they pay us as a business. You have the solar and or battery system installed, and then the money that you've been saving from your energy bill is used to make the repayment on your solar or battery system, meaning your out-of-pocket costs are generally equal to or less than what you've been paying. and then at the end of a term, you own that system outright. You own it outright from day one. You just have an outstanding finance on it, and once you pass that point of return on investment, you are still in front. So with the cheaper on batteries program, making the upfront cost of batteries more attractive, and then the very attractive interest rates that are available for green energy payment plans, accessing solar and battery systems with zero upfront cost is very, very easy. So how solar finance works? Well, there is in almost every instance zero deposit required. So you can pay cash if you want, and I'm not I would say not trying to talk you out of that or suggest that that's not the best way of doing it, because ultimately paying cash is always going to be the cheapest option for you. With any loan or payment plan, there are financing costs, application fees, monthly account fees, interest rates. So the most economical option is to pay cash. But next down from that is a zero deposit payment plan. You have no capital up front. You continue paying your fixed monthly repayments like you would have done with your power bills. However, these are now an investment in your own power station. So instead of renting your energy, you're actually paying off a mortgage on your own power station. And because they are fixed monthly repayments, you don't have that bill shock. You don't have that bill anxiety. How much is my power bill going to be? It's been a hot summer. I've used a lot of aircon. We've had the family around. What's that bill going to be in February, March? You don't have to worry about that because you have a fixed monthly cost. And the loan terms can be anywhere from 5 to 10 years with zero penalty for paying it off sooner. So what a lot of our customers do that do opt for payment plans is they will go with the 9 or 10 year term, because it means the minimum upfront payment is the least amount, but then they pay it off in 3, 4 or 5 years. They save on all of the interest and there's no penalty to do so. And what's exciting is the majority of payment plans now are actually government-backed green energy financing, meaning it's incredibly regulated, it's incredibly low interest rates, and it's incredibly easy to access. So if you are thinking about doing this and you haven't already discussed it, do discuss with our specialists the option of accessing a payment plan, because there's significant advantages to doing so. And on the left, we have your standard, if you stick with your energy retailer, your average quarterly bill of $500, which is around $1,800 a year, give or take. You are going to be in a position where you have an annual increase of 5 to 10%, in some cases higher, and this never ends. You never see an exit point of this. There's 3 options. It keeps happening. You unplug and move out bush and live in a cave, or you put a solar and battery system on and take control of your energy. On the right, same thing. You have zero upfront cost. You have a quarterly energy bill, which is about the same. In some cases, dependent on the system, it could be a touch higher than what you've been paying in the short term, but long term, you're in front significantly. You have remaining bills of next to nothing, or if you partner with the right energy plan, you could be in credits from day one. You have a fixed monthly amount, which doesn't increase. There's no, shock every quarter. And by the 7th or 8th year, worst case scenario, you've got that return on investment in most cases. We're actually seeing customers that are returning on their investment in under 5 years. And some products in market, including our own battery system, comes with a 12-year product warranty, meaning it's essentially doubling your money in the warranty period, and then some. So a lot of advantages of doing this and doing it smart. Some of the most wealthy people in the world use other people's money to finance things and keep their own money in the bank. And if you select the right finance provider, you have the option to do the same. So looking at the different finance companies that we offer, looking at the different payment plans that are available, we partner with multiple different organizations, but the 2 main ones are Plenty and Bright. They offer flexible finance options for most budgets. We can do joint applicants, we can do self-employed, small business owners, some government provided pensions, aged pensions. There's a lot of different options for that. It gives you access to government-backed funding. So thanks to things like the CECF and the Home Energy Upgrades Fund, along with some major bank providers, you could be looking at purpose-built fast track to renewables that's in some cases 6.79% up to that 9 or 10 year period, which my mortgage home loan is on 6.2 or 6.3, I think. So we're getting really, really close to those variable mortgage rates that have got your house up for collateral but you have this on a renewable energy product, which is returning as soon as it's installed. So lots of different ways of making it affordable, lots of different ways of accessing finance for you, and we can always discuss individual needs and then get the experts involved. Obviously, we're not financial experts, so we can't give financial advice, but we can provide different products available for you to make it more accessible. So once you've understood the rebates, you've understood how to access the right financing, we then have to figure out, well, what battery size do you need? And we will move through this relatively quickly. For those of you that haven't seen any of our webinars before, we do have a detailed hour-long session on the battery sizing. So if we don't answer your questions on this, you can definitely go back and watch that again on our YouTube or website. But what we do need to consider is how much energy your house uses, how much solar or electricity is available to charge the system that you're actually going to get the rebate on, how independent you'd like to be from the grid, whether your battery can charge all the way down to the bottom, or whether it is one of the older style batteries that needs to be topped up. And then finally, what is the budget? And hopefully that budget is a little bit more clear now. You understand what financial incentives are available and also how you can finance. So we have to figure out firstly the battery size. Do you want the battery to cover just 10% above what your average daily usage would be? So every day the battery is empty in the morning and then you fill it back up through the day. Or do you want to have a little bit more flexibility and freedom, a bit more protection from what's to come in the future, and also potentially trade energy out of your battery through a VPP or a wholesale energy provider and put yourself in a position where you're actually getting a small income or payment back from installing that solar and battery system. We are tending to find that customers are opting more for option 2, whilst the rebates are significantly more generous than they are going to be in the future. But obviously both options mean that you're almost non-reliant on the grid, you're in control of your energy, and you are using the cheapest and cleanest electricity, obviously. We then have to consider charging speed, and this slide isn't overly relevant. The reason that I wanted to discuss this again and highlight it for today's audience is there's a lot of proposals out there and quotes being done for very, very big battery systems, but with very, very small inverters. And having a very, very big battery system and a very, very small inverter means that you may never actually fully realize the benefit of that storage system. So to explain that in a little bit more detail, your inverter is the tap, and it controls how fast your battery can charge and how fast it can discharge or provide energy to your home. In the below example, we have a 50 kilowatt hour battery on the left, which is the largest battery that can be funded via the rebate schemes, and a 5 kilowatt inverter. Now, in Australia, on average, we get about 4.2 hours of usable sunlight per day. Obviously, the further north you get, and on different seasons, that increases, and the further south and in winter months, that's less. But on average, across the year, about 4.2 hours of sunlight. So if we take those two numbers and we divide them by each other, you're going to be looking at about 10 hours of constant energy needed just to charge the battery with a 5 kilowatt inverter. That's without the home using anything. There's a very, very good chance that the battery is never going to fully charge or fully discharge, meaning you've got this wonderfully big battery on the home, you've saved a lot of money on the upfront cost, but you may never actually realize the benefits, versus making sure your inverter is sized correctly. And I would probably recommend a 1 in 4, maybe a 1 in 5 ratio as being the sweet spot. And what I mean by that is a 5 kilowatt inverter goes 4 times into a 20 kilowatt hour battery, meaning you're probably only going to need about those 4 hours of sunlight to fully charge or discharge that battery, and you're actually going to really see the benefits of the system. So in this instance on the left, if you'd have maybe put a 10 kilowatt inverter in, you would definitely realize the benefits of that storage system. But doing the 5 kilowatt inverter with a 50 kilowatt hour battery is a bit crazy. So, we're seeing a lot of really cheap big batteries online, particularly on Facebook. There's a few companies doing it. It's pretty scary, and we've seen it all happen before with solar. So, if again, cheap's not good and good's not cheap. But if you are engaging with any of those companies, make sure you ask the questions, make sure it makes sense, and you're completely comfortable with the purchase before proceeding to installation, because it's definitely a wild market out there at the moment. And then once you figure all that out, can you charge it every day? And the only reason we've got this on here is the cheap home battery program specifically states that you must have solar attached to the property to benefit from the rebate. You can't get the rebate for just battery only systems. You can get it though if you have a very small solar system, but access something like a cheap the wholesale energy market. There's some plans out there that have free power in the middle of the day. There's Amber, for example, where you can actually access wholesale power prices and charge the battery for pretty much free in the middle of the day, or even get paid to do it. So make sure that the battery system that you install is compatible with some of those energy plans, and you can use the grid to charge the battery in days where you don't have as much excess solar, or your roof doesn't really make sense for a big solar system, because you can still access the rebate. You can still reduce your reliance on the grid and the electricity costs. You just have to make sure you're doing it with a company that understands the nuances of that, because it's still going to be a significant financial benefit for you long term. And obviously, it's really important that you get a battery you can charge. We've seen it in the past where customers have put batteries on, and then they found that they never actually go over around 50% of charge because the solar system's not big enough, and then they have to pay to add more solar on top. And it's much more economical to do it all at the same time, or to leverage something like an energy plan and play the market that's in front of you. So multiple ways to charge, multiple things to consider when sizing, but all boil down into making a smart investment and ultimately making it as economical as possible. So today's conversation has been hopefully structured around answering questions about rebates, providing information on how you can make it as affordable as possible, and how you can lock in the best rebates and the most economical financing. We wanted to play our part in doing that as well. So we have got an exclusive webinar offer for today's attendees and for those that registered for today's session but maybe couldn't be available. So what we are offering is the opportunity that anybody who proceeds with a 1,5 battery system, so the 1,5 battery brand, will receive the 2025 rebate value, even though they're going to be installing in 2026. So we are pretty much full almost everywhere for installations this side of Christmas now, which means the battery and solar systems will be installed in the new year. And the rebate is attached to systems based on the installation date, not on the sale date. So for most companies, if you buy now and install in January, they will be pricing in next year's rebates for you. Anybody on this call or anybody that's registered for this call, if they proceed by the end of the month, we'll lock in 2025 rebates for you, even if it's a new year installation. So fantastic opportunity to save up to $2,000 in federal rebates based on the largest size solar and battery systems that are accessible. And on top of that, you'll actually get access to our battery rebate bonus offer, which is the opportunity to get one free battery module, so 4.6 kilowatt hours of battery for free on a larger battery system. And if you do go for the largest battery size that we offer, we will also offer a $1,500 cash back, meaning if you get it and install it in, say, January, you get that cash back. Hopefully it'll make you in a little bit more of a financial, or put you in a better financial position after an expensive Christmas and New Year period, which usually drains my bank account, and I'm sure it does the same for you. So opportunities to lock something in now, even though you've potentially missed out on locking in this year's rebates because installations are full, we will offer you the opportunity to lock that rebate in. So please do speak to one of the consultants if you're already in the process of getting a quote, or make sure you lodge your request and speak to our welcome team over the next couple of days to lock in an appointment with one of our consultants, so that we can get you access to those offers, reduce the overall cost, and then hopefully put a little bit of cash back in the bank. So that's the offers, that's the information. Hopefully it has been helpful and you have received a little bit of value out of this. We do have about 10 minutes left of the allotted hour session, and we have already had a couple of questions come through. Please don't be shy. Please make sure you get the most out of today's session, and make sure that you are asking whatever questions come to mind. Looking at answering a few of the questions that are already in there whilst you guys jump into that chat function. Again, it's on the bottom right hand side of your screen. You'll see 9 dots. You will see the ability for Q&A, and then you will have the ability to ask a question. We'll start with Stefan's question first. I'm building a house in To be honest with you, under normal circumstances, I would say probably a little bit too soon, Stefan. But what you can do is, I mean, you could firstly take advantages of today's webinar offer and lock in 2025 rebates and provisionally book your installation for June. We're anticipating that the rebates are going to drop in around July, or there's going to be a change to the scheme in around July, and that's what the noise behind the scenes is. Nothing official, obviously, and always a potential for a little bit of hearsay. But what you could do is you could lock in pricing now. You could book your installation for June and maybe install just before the property was complete, guaranteeing that you lock in not only stock pricing, rebate pricing, but also an installation space. Because if the government announce in January or February that they're going to reduce or change the parameters of the rebate scheme on July 1st, which is also when they are in the process of mandating free power for power companies. So there's a potential that the two things will coincide. You'll see a boom and a rebate rush like we've never been seen before. And when this happened in 2009, 10 and 11, when they brought the first solar rebates out, then they changed the rebates, then they took it away, then they brought it back out. Some solar companies were booked out for 9 months at a time. And almost 50% of all solar retailers went out of business at the time because of cash flow, because of rising stock costs and skill shortages. So if you're going to do it, I would suggest locking it in now. And you always have the option to, discuss the potential of a no obligation cancellation in that contract if it's something like a building clause. But speak to one of the specialists for sure. Next question from Renata would be, what resources are available to check buyers are getting the best fit products for one's use? That's a really, really good question. And unfortunately, the industry, how to word this constructively, I wouldn't want to be a consumer in the industry, particularly when rebates are so prevalent, because there's a lot of businesses out there. There's a lot of solar and battery companies or solar companies that have decided to start doing batteries. There's a lot of products that are not really fit for purpose, and there's a lot of companies not doing the best thing. There's also a lot of the opposite of that. There's some great products, there's some great companies, and some really, really good installers. I guess you need to make sure you're dealing with the right business, Renata. So make sure the company's been around for a long time. Make sure they've shown that they've been able to grow through times of difficulty, and they're not just flying by the seat of the pants. Make sure they have accreditations and awards, and they're looking at innovation instead of just rinse and repeat. How do we improve business practice and overall quality? Because in our industry, there's a really, really good pool of installers, but being a really, really good installer and running a really, really good and healthy business are often two different things. So you have to make sure not only you get a good quality product and a good quality installer, but make sure it's from a business that will be around into the future to honor the warranties. So I guess without worrying too much about this being a shameless plug, the best thing you can do is deal with a company like 1,5 that have been around for a long time, have the ability to demonstrate and prove the claims that we make regarding quality and ongoing service and support. And hopefully, always a good feel as well. You get a good understanding of somebody and whether they're being genuine and honest with you by asking a lot of questions. So ask questions and make an educated decision. Question from Gary. Do you do any strata building solar installation under the SAW program? Honestly, Gary, I haven't heard of the SAW program, but what I do know is that we are one of the preferred partners for the Solar for Apartments program down in Victoria. We've done 5 or 6 large apartment blocks where we put big solar and battery systems in, and then that energy shared across all of the different buildings in there. One of the focuses for the government is how do we make solar and renewables available for renters and for apartment owners. The good news is that, as more and more people add batteries and that wholesale energy cost flattens and becomes more stable, power should, in theory, become cheaper for everybody. So we're doing our best. But at the moment, I would have to do a little bit of research on the SAW program and then come back to you with some specific advice. Yeah, I have and I hope I've pronounced that right. My accent's not very good for names that are one syllable. I have a 7.7 kilowatt solar system. Daily usage is 30 kilowatt hours average. what's the battery capacity required? Also, my sort as microinverters, do I still need an additional inverter for battery? That is a very, very good question, and hopefully allows me to demonstrate a little bit of knowledge so that people feel a bit more comfortable with the information today. But generally speaking, a 7.7 kilowatt solar system would produce about 4.2 times that amount. Remember, we have 4.2 hours of sunlight, so you go 4.2 times 7.7 will give you an average production of about 32 kilowatts or kilowatt hours of production. If you're still using 30 kilowatt hours of energy, that means that you're still buying 30 kilowatt hours of energy from the grid. So either you're using a lot more power on site than what your solar system is able to generate, or you're using all of your power outside of sunlight hours, which means that production, the solar that your system's producing is being sent back to the grid, and you're then buying it back at night for 10, 12, 15 times the price. So realistically, you need a 30 kilowatt hour battery system just to offset your average daily usage. Whether you can charge that with the excess solar that you have or not, it remains to be seen. We would need to do a bill analysis for you. We would need to look at, usage patterns. We would need to understand your home, what's changing, whether more solar makes sense for you or access to a wholesale energy plan. Regarding your microinverters, there's a couple of options. So I'm assuming that a microinverter is going to be an N-phase system. That's the most prevalent microinverter system out there. N-phase have a fantastic battery in terms of its technical capabilities, but because it's M-phase and it has some of the smarts, it is a little bit more costly than some of the other brands. So you have a few different options depending on whether you're on single phase or three phase. The first option would be to add an N-phase battery, and then you don't have to worry about adding third-party inverters. The second option would be to AC couple another brand of inverter and battery system, which means add it alongside. And the third option would be to add more solar and battery via a third-party inverter. So I guess the easiest thing to do is let us know when you are free to talk. And if you haven't already done so, reach out to us and we'll do our very best to help you specifically. What brands of batteries does your company provide? Is this information available online? Well, the short answer is yes, it is available online. The long answer is we have our own brand of battery that's specifically designed and optimized to our own requirements. We have a lab in Berlin where our global head office is that assesses, that measures real-time energy grid data, makes recommendations on software and firmware and how batteries and products should be built to really interact with wholesale energy. So what we've done is we've gone to market, we've had our own battery built, we have our own battery brand. It has the longest warranty of any DC coupled battery at 12 years, and it's scalable all the way up to 42 kilowatt hours of storage. If that doesn't suit your needs or you already have another brand installed, we offer all of the major products: Tesla, Enphase, SolarEdge. We're one of Sungrow's largest installation partners, and we won all of the battery awards, largest battery installer in Queensland, Victoria, second largest nationally, before the battery rebate was even a thing, and we did that all off the back of almost exclusively installing Sungrow and Tesla batteries. So all of the major brands, there's a lot of brands out there that I definitely wouldn't recommend installing, and unfortunately low quality products with low quality workmanship generally end up being a very, very poor outcome. So make sure you select the right products. But I guess on the product side of things, speak to one of our specialists. Again, I'll continue with the deflection on that. But it's really important to remember that you can get a really, really good brand of product from a really, really poor or low quality installer or retailer, and they're going to have nothing but problems. So the most important thing is make sure you find a company you're dealing with and then trust their recommendations on product. How often do solar panels need to be washed to maintain efficiency? A very good question. Really dependent on where you live, what the environment looks like. Do you have a lot of birds? Do you have of trees, foliage? What angle are your panels at? But generally speaking, I would probably say every 6 to 12 months you want to be giving them a good wash. Soft bristle brush, no harsh chemicals. You can squirt them with a hose pipe if you can get to the roof from there. They will start to build up a little bit of dirt and grime, and that can reduce the efficiency of the system. What you can do is have a chat with the company that you decide to move forward with a battery on, because whilst they're installing, they can hop on the roof and do an assessment of your system. We can generally tell if the system's producing well, though, based on the app that you get, the monitoring app, and then also how it's impacting your power bills. Cameron has asked, do you offer intelligent software to pair up with installed batteries to permit app interacting with wholesale energy market? Are your batteries compatible with Amber? Cameron, that's a fantastic question, and I will and can talk about this for hours. I'll do my very best not to. As a business, 1,5 are actually a software company. So we just happen to install solar and batteries, and the best solar and batteries in market. Over in the European markets, we're already an energy retailer with an energy optimization tool called Heartbeat, which optimizes customers' assets, solar, battery, heat pumps, hot water systems, and gives them access to the cheapest and cleanest electricity, similar to the wholesale energy model in Australia. We've worked with Amber as a business for a good few years now, and one of the early adopters, recommending customers to access that. We've done that very, very successfully with products such as Sungrow and Tesla. But what we can't tend to find is that when you're using a product from a manufacturer and then a retail plan from somebody like Amber, there's always the opportunity for something to go wrong and for somebody to drop the ball a little bit and not get customers the optimal experience. Amber are an incredible company that have done a really, really good job at accelerating the adoption of batteries, and our battery product is absolutely compatible with Amber and is designed specifically to specifications to make it as responsive as possible. We offer a charge or a cycle warranty on the batteries, meaning it's designed and it's warranted to integrate with wholesale. And we also have our own products coming soon. Heartbeat is only around the corner for the Australian market as well. So very, very excited to be in a position. You may or may not have noticed throughout the presentation, we talked about innovation. We talked about dealing with a company that's always looking at what comes next and not just installing solar and batteries. And that's essentially what 1,5 is, a one-stop shop for the manufacturer, installation, ongoing optimization, and then not too far around the corner, wholesale energy plans soon. So definitely speak to one of our specialists, Cameron, for a little bit more information. Our sales team actually right now are in a training session with Amber to make sure we give the absolute best information to customers when talking about wholesale energy returns. Based on your knowledge, is Grow Watt battery any good? We don't install Grow Watt batteries. If that gives you any idea of the quality of the product, we really only try and install quality products that we're comfortable, particularly from a service and support and aftercare. Grow Watt's not in our product portfolio. We do tend to find that cheaper companies offer Grow Watt products, as long as some other brands. However, I am aware that in the recent years, Grow Watt have made some significant improvements to the quality of the product and the aftercare that they offer. So, yeah, there's very hard to answer. Honestly, I think the easiest way to say would be we don't use them as a product, and we've decided against it for a few different reasons. Looking at the questions, I think we've ticked them all off. We have 5 minutes over time, so I'll just give people maybe 1 or 2 more minutes to ask any more questions, and then I'll wrap us up. I'll move on to next steps, and I'll thank you all very, very much for spending the last hour and 5 minutes with us and listening to me drone on about all things solar, battery, and rebates. Again, all register attendees will receive the link to the recording and a recap of today's offers, including those that couldn't make it. So if you do get it, please do help spread the message, watch it, jump on the bus, join the family. We'd love to help you reduce your costs. If you're already in touch with a 1,5 representative, they'll follow up with you soon. However, we are in an industry boom. We have unprecedented demand. So if anything in today's session has resonated with you, pick up the phone first, speak to one of the specialists, and lock in the offers. And if you are one of the few that haven't yet spoken to us, we'll include a link in the follow-up email so you can easily book in a chat with one of our team. And then finally, Paul, rather than look at an electricity bill, why don't you assess via the NMI? That's a very good question, and we do have software to do that, providing the property is set up to be able to allow us to do that. And it also depends on what state you're in. So speak to one of our specialists. They will do a deep dive into your usage and provide you a full cost benefit analysis on whether it makes sense and on what size system to use. So thanks again to everybody for attending. I will be ending the session and ending the recording in a moment. Hopefully you got a little bit out of today's session, even just one nugget of knowledge. And looking forward to seeing you all in the installation queue over the next couple of months and helping you access the cheapest and cleanest electricity. Thanks, and have a wonderful afternoon.